Getting your competition hat on, Coles and Woolworths, are they too dominant? And if so, what's the evidence of it?
Oh, statistically, it's certainly the case that the Australian grocery sector is more concentrated than in other countries, more concentrated than the United Kingdom or the United States, for example. That's meant a squeeze on suppliers, but we also want to make sure that we're not seeing a squeeze on consumers. And that's why we've got Craig Emerson, one of Australia's top policy economists, conducting this review into the Food and Grocery Code of Conduct to make sure suppliers and consumers get a fair deal.
Ultimately, though, whatever their dominance is, I mean, I think they've got 70% of the market, and compared to the rest of the developed economies, that tends to be more for two. But the evidence, your evidence-based has to be on margins ultimately, doesn't it? Is that what needs to be looked at? If their margins are commensurate with around the world, then, as much as it might feel like they're profiteering, they're not?
Oh, it's a fair question to ask. Certainly we saw a improvement in prices that consumers paid when we had Aldi enter the market. That dose of foreign competition did make a difference to Australian consumers. Increasingly now we're seeing a lot of split basket shopping, people doing half the shop at one grocery store, half the shop at another grocery store. But as a government, we need to make sure, and we are making sure, that the supermarkets are doing the right thing by Aussie consumers.
Yeah, problem with that, if you've got a family, it's usually online, because going to the supermarket, or two of them, is a lot of time to commit. Once you sort of conduct a review, often in government, you're sort of taking ownership of any perceived problem out of it. Could it be a bit of a flop for Labor? Because if it's not, there's not a problem with margins, you're not going to do anything at the end of it, are you?
Well, Tom, I think about this from the lens of consumers, not through politics. It is really important that we're on the side of consumers and we're on the side of workers. What we saw from Peter Dutton over the last week was a call for a boycott of Woolworths, which, if every Australian consumer followed it through, would see 200,000 Australian workers lose their jobs.
Wouldn't they just go to other supermarkets, though?
Well, you'd see...
You're still buying the food from somewhere.
You would have seen calamitous impacts in the economy if every Australian followed the argument of Peter Dutton.
I'm not sure it's happening.
Frankly, his approach is economically reckless and doesn't take into account the important competition reforms we've put in place, raising the penalties for anti-competitive conduct, banning unfair contract terms, putting in place the Competition Task Force. These are real reforms that will make a difference to consumers and boost the productivity, raise the speed limit of the economy.